Hi there, and welcome to Let's Slow Down, a podcast for all of you who feel tired and stressed from this overwhelming world. Here we'll have fun, inspiring conversations about living life on our own terms and explore ways to ease the pace of our modern world, because life really is good when you're relaxed enough to be present for it. I'm your host, Anne-Marie Stolting, and I welcome you to this space where I hope to inspire you to slow down, because life is too short to let it go by in a blur. So take a deep breath, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Let's Slow Down podcast. My guest today is Kavita Ahuja, a certified women's career and life transitions coach, committed to helping women align their careers and lives with their strengths, passions, and values. As host of the Midlife Reinvention podcast, Kavita inspires listeners with empowering insights and stories. She also created the course, It's My Time Now, with certifications in coaching and emotional reframing, and an MBA from the Rotman School of Management. Kavita brings expertise and transformational guidance to clients and organizations alike. A proud Canadian of East Indian heritage, she resides in Toronto and is working on her debut book, It's My Time Now. Welcome to Let's Slow Down, Kavita.
Hello, thank you so much for having me, Anne-Marie. It's a pleasure to be here. I love the premise of your podcast. I really do. It's about slowing down and daily and also in those pivotal stages in our life that things become clearer. So I really resonated with it very much so.
Hey, I'm so glad that we connected and that you're here today. And we are going to be talking about finding your Ikigai, your reason for being, and exploring your 4-step process to discovering that. So before we do that, I would like to just get to know you a little bit. And I thought, would you mind sharing a little bit about yourself and how you ended up as a coach doing this meaningful work?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. And yeah, I think that if I really think about it, Anne-Marie, my story is really actually, it is about taking that pause in my life, right? You see, and I think many of your listeners may relate, or maybe your previous guests, that I was in a corporate career for 25 years prior to what I'm doing now in the pharmaceutical industry and in sales and marketing. And over the years, continually set and exceeded my objectives. And as a result, I did very well. But if I back up a little bit, maybe you mentioned a bit in my bio. So I'm a South Asian woman. I live in Canada. I was raised here. And when we moved here when I was 2 years old from Kenya, actually, the reason I bring that up is because there was that really strong work ethic that was instilled in me from the Indian work ethic that was instilled in me at a young age. And it was kind of that expectation, get a good education, study, get a good job, get married, have kids, all of that. And you're nodding your head. So thank you. Yeah. So I followed that to a T, and I think many of your listeners may also do that. And it was great. It went on. But then something happened in that around the time I turned 50, actually. There's this voice that came to me and asked me, is this it? Is this what you really want? Who are you really? And what do you really want? Oftentimes, especially as women, like we're kind of go through life in a kind of a wheel, I guess, a hamster wheel, and we're just going on and don't give ourselves the pause to ask ourselves these really important questions. And so that's what I did. I started hearing that voice. It was like, are you really satisfied? Are you really fulfilled? And I kind of ignored it initially because I was like, oh, I'm being silly. Everything's perfect. Why would I even entertain changing things?
Right.
But then it got very loud, and it was like, okay, I have to heed that. And I would say that that's something I would suggest to your listeners as well, is if there's something inside of you that really is calling you, it's really important to heed that voice or that calling, because it's telling you something. And so then I did. So I decided then that I was going to follow that, and I left my career of 25 years, and I went on a kind of a process of rediscovery, and we studied a lot of different concepts like Ikigai, transitions. What is all this about? What happens in midlife? What happens? Playing big is one of the things. So it was a law of attraction, all these things that I was really interested in learning. And then as a result, I realized that I wasn't the only woman going through this. And I wanted to really help So I became a coach. I started my podcast. And now if I look back, I'm like, wow, how did that, just listening to that voice led me to where I am. And I'm just so fulfilled and satisfied, and just helping people through these transformational phases in their life is really incredible. And so I put together a process, a framework, which I lead my clients through. And so that's how it started. So it's kind of like going back, you look at these things in your life and you think, okay, everything is kind of meant to be, and we follow the prescribed
Yep.
norms. But sometimes it's in taking that pause and asking us ask ourselves these important questions. And so that's kind of a summary of where I am and how I got to be where I am.
It's great and so brave of you to leave that quote unquote successful career you got on paper. It's exactly what you had been
Hmm.
striving for forever, probably in your head what you were striving for forever too. And then
Hmm.
you got there and we're like, what's next? There's got to be more, right? Which I think is so brave because you got out of that comfort zone and took a big risk and
Yes,
clearly
yes.
it was worth it.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that, Henry, because like I think a lot of people have it inside of them, but they're often held back by these fears. And I had those, which is what I didn't leave for 3 years until I actually made the move, right? And it's about the internal fears, and also like, what if I fail? What are people going to think if I do this? What if I actually succeed? What happens then?
What if?
What if, right? So it's
Yeah.
all these fears which we also kind of tackle and by one in my program. And it's perfectly normal to feel those. But as you said, if the only really way to address those fears by taking the first one step at a time, and not having to really figure out everything, like the big mountain in front of you. Like if you look at the big mountain in front of you, it gets very overwhelming, right? So it's about taking
Yeah.
one step at a time.
Those
Yeah.
little steps are so important. And that
Yes.
has really been a very common theme with a lot of guests that have come on my show that have taken those big leaps of faith as you did.
Mhm.
They all said that. I think, especially as women, we try to have it all figured out, have that
Mhm.
control piece, especially when we're navigating like family life and kids. And we
Mhm.
have so many balls in the air. We feel like we have to have it all figured out to move forward.
Mhm.
And getting out of that thought, thinking differently and thinking, okay, well, what's that next step? Taking that action. That's all
Yes.
we need right now. And it makes perfect sense. And I've seen so many people have such success with it, but it can also be really hard because a lot of us
Mhm.
do feel a little bit stuck sometimes, especially at the age you mentioned you were 50 when you made this big leap. And I think a lot of us, as we're following that roadmap of all the things we're
Mhm.
supposed to do as we become parents, and maybe we take a pause
Mhm.
for raising our kids and things like that, it can be a little tricky finding our way again. And I think
Mhm.
that's where really thinking about your purpose and that changes. Our purpose changes as we change
Mhm.
and grow and evolve. So,
Absolutely. I think I kind of alluded to this earlier, but we're always, and it's something wrong with it. Like we're givers. We give to, whether it's our kids, if we have kids, our spouses, or even our elderly parents, or like our employers. We're always giving, giving, giving. And then that's one of the reasons I call my coaching program, it's my time now, because it is our time, right? But it's not being selfish. I think it's really like if you actually take the time to really figure out who you are, then that actually makes you better for other people. Like
I
it
agree.
just gives you that energy and that positivity in your life that you can actually be better for others. And so,
Yep.
yeah.
For sure. It's just changing that because a lot of times, many of us, just as adults, I think we feel guilty when we're doing something for us, when we're so used to doing
Mhm.
just that for everybody else. So
Mhm.
just reframing that and letting everyone listening, like letting yourself think big and think about what you actually want, like genuinely want without considering everybody else, all the other players. Just think about you for a little while. So many of us shut down right there because we think, oh, that's selfish. Oh, I
Yeah.
have to put
Yeah.
everybody else first.
100%.
And
Yeah.
that's great, but you can actually serve better all of those people if you let yourself be first once in a while.
Yes.
It's an important message. I think we all need it like every single morning to remind ourselves of that.
Yeah, I think so. Like, what do I want today? Who do I want to be today? Like, who do we where do we want to show up as? What do we want to versus always doing, which we're so programmed to do, right? Or as a society, it's just like,
We are.
what are you
Yeah.
doing? What are you doing? And what do we have to do today? And yes, of course, you have your to do lists and all that, but I think we'll get into that later. But
Yes.
yes,
Yes. We talk a lot about being versus doing and
yes, yes,
incorporating both sides because our
exactly.
society is a doing society. We just constantly go.
Yeah, yeah.
And just the slowing down. I've had so many people tell me that slowing down, they love that concept, but that they actually get anxiety when they think about slowing down or trying
Mhm.
because they just can't. And I find that really interesting. So it's definitely, we're not a society of take a break, take a rest, take a few minutes to take some deep breaths.
Yeah.
We don't necessarily push those types of habits as much as
No.
maybe we should. Maybe that's why we
But
get to
it's
some of the issues that we have.
yeah.
So yeah, it's definitely, I think, an important message for everybody to hear
Mhm.
regularly. So your Ikigai, why don't you, I mean, we talked about it a little bit before we press record. I've heard of this concept and I know it's very popular, but maybe not everyone has heard of it. So why don't you, could you define Ikigai for everybody first before
Sure,
we get into
sure.
it?
I mean, this concept really fascinated me very early on, so much so that I put it in my framework, right? And so, Ikigai it literally means your reason for being. And so it originated from research conducted in residents in the Japanese village of Okinawa, Japan. And that actually is one of the blue zones. And we talked about this a little earlier.
Yes.
And the blue
Yes.
zones in the world, or those areas, and there's many areas in the world, but Okinawa, Japan is one of them, where the largest numbers of 100-year-olds or centenarians reside or they live, right? And in fact, there was a documentary recently about that. Is like, why do these people in these zones, like, what is it about them or what they do in their life that have that longevity in their life? And in Okinawa, one of the reasons that was discovered is this concept of ikigai. So ikigai is really it's really a combination of four different elements. The first is what you love, right? So your passions. The second is what does the world need, which can kind of relate to your mission. The third is what are you really good at, right? So those are your strengths. And the fourth is what can you get paid for? So this is kind of like a Venn diagram. It's four circles. And then what you do is it's not just a purpose, it's more than purpose. It's about all of these overlapping elements in your life, right? And when you find the overlapping elements and in the inner circle is was your ikigai. It just provides you direction in your life. And in fact, there's research that's found many positive effects of finding your ikigai, decreased anxiety, enhanced immune function, increase in life expectancy, obviously, improved resilience, and enhanced self esteem. So it's really about finding those elements that overlap. And so I can share with you how I take my clients through that if you like.
I would love that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So first, it's important, Henry, is to really look at the first thing is our strengths or superpowers. Like, so what are you really, really good at? And that can change over time, obviously, but what comes naturally to you? What skills do you have that are unique only to you? And sometimes even if we ask other people, like, what do you come to me for that you find that I do well? Or so when you think about it that way, I often ask my clients, like, just take 10 minutes and write down everything that you've done that you're just great at. And people don't take that time to really celebrate themselves and their achievements and their successes and who they are.
Yeah.
So that's the
And it
first
can be
step.
hard. It can be hard for people
It
to do it.
is,
I
it
know.
is.
Because we just don't think about it. And it's not supposed to be
Yeah.
a trick question.
No, it's like everybody, that's the one thing is like everyone is unique and that's one of the things, concepts about Iki that's really interests me is that each person has something to give in this world. And it's a combination of all that you are in different ways. It's just about identifying that, right? And so that's the first thing. The first thing is the strengths. The second thing is your passions. Like, what are you really passionate about? If you were to like have no limitations on time or money or anything, what would you do in a day? What are 5 things you would do, for example? Think about when you were a child. What excited you when you were a child, and what time went by so fast that you didn't know where it went? So think about that, like, and really be open to whatever comes up, whether it's I loved writing, or I loved art, or I was a musician and I always wanted to be, but I've varied that. So those things can come up. And the third thing is looking at your values. I think you mentioned earlier, our values change. And as we're younger, maybe it's about climbing up the ladder, corporate ladder, or now as we get older, it might be about giving back or contributing to society or charity or anything like that. So identifying what are your top, let's say, 5 values. So when you identify all those things and you write words in the overlapping chart, you'll see there's a commonality, right? It becomes a common theme. And so that is where you find your actual sweet spot. And that is your Ikigai, right? And it's a combination of all those different elements. And when you go through that process, it's actually quite fascinating and eye opening. What you would never imagine, like, we go through a life like, okay, we have our careers that maybe we've been in for a long time, and we think that's what we're meant to do. But when you discover it's not necessarily all about career, it could be like you could find your passion and your ikigai outside of your work, for example. It could be pursuing that hobby that you've always wanted to, but maybe it's something that you can apply into a working thing. Maybe you want to become a consultant in that. So it's about opening your mind up and your the options up in your life that you never would have imagined before.
So these four elements. Oh, and so I don't know if we touched on the fourth, what you get paid for. How do you encourage people to incorporate that into that Venn diagram?
Yeah, exactly. So you look at what you have been paid for in the past. And also, the other thing I would say is that it's not about giving up everything that you've done, right? So, what about what you were paid for in the past? Did you actually love doing? Like, there's certain aspects of your work that I'm sure you loved doing. Like, what tasks did you do in your work that you really loved? Bring that out, and if that's something you can be paid for. For example, I was in sales before, and I was really good at it, and I got paid for that. But I do aspects of that in what I'm doing right now because obviously as a coach, I'm good at it. Like I sell my services, I sell myself every day. Like we're putting ourselves out there. So that what I mean. So that incorporates in what we
Sure.
can get paid for. And the things that we got
Transferring
paid
it
for
in different
before, but
ways.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
These four elements, they're providing us direction to finding that sweet spot, I guess we'll
Yeah.
call it. They do have
Yes.
that mental picture. And it's so interesting. I was just a few days ago on Friday. It's only Tuesday today as we're recording this. So just a few days ago, I attended the New Jersey Women's Conference.
Hmm.
And it's like the largest conference of professional women in the state of the year. So 700 women came together. It was really energizing and uplifting, encouraging. It was really great. First time ever going. And I attended a seminar where the woman mentioned this and actually put this Venn diagram that we are
Oh,
talking
really? Wow, that's a
about.
coincidence.
So I have a really good image of it in my head.
Yeah.
I think most of our listeners know what a Venn diagram is. So finding that
Yeah.
center with your clients that you work with, do you find that there is sometimes one element that's harder for people that they struggle with like regularly, or is it really different for everybody?
It's different for everybody, but I would say that finding the passion piece can be a little because we don't let ourselves kind of dream, right? Like,
Mm.
I'll give you an example. Like, one of my clients, if I could, like, maybe it would kind of put it into perspective. So, she came to me because she was in higher education. She was a project manager in higher education for like 30 years. And she loved parts of what she did, but she came to me because she was completely overwhelmed, overworked, and just didn't want to be doing that anymore. Right. And she's like, what's next for me? I don't know what to do. I don't really know what's next for me. And so we went through this process. And so we discovered that part of what she did in her work, like she loved the processes. So she really loved helping people through organizing their work and their systems and their processes. She liked to do that. But then she also had this, when it came to her passion, she says, I actually love writing. And that piece of me has been buried. And so we like, okay, so what do you want to actually write about? Like, what is it that would energize you. And so she has a family member who's going through a lot of anxiety and mental issues. And she said, I would love to help people through that as a parent. I would love to talk to them. So what I need, so it's like, okay. So what she decided once we went through this Ikigai process is she was going to become a consultant. She is, she is now a consultant in helping organizations through their processes because that's what she loved to do and that's what she got paid for. But she's also now writing her first book on helping parents go through the struggles of mental health issues. And so that energy, that passion that she had, the energy that comes out of the positive energy that comes out of doing that, it just lights up her whole life and it gets translated into her work. So it doesn't have to be like, okay, it's just about your work. It can be in other aspects of your life that you bring out your Ikigai.
I
So
love that because it is all so connected, and
yes, yes,
we forget that sometimes.
yes.
Compartmentalized. Maybe fill our cup a little bit more in in that other area, but it
Yeah.
can actually lift up all areas of our life.
Yeah, yeah. I talk a lot about anabolic and catabolic energy. Anabolic energy is a positive and building up type of energy, and it's associated with things that we love to do. And when we do the things that we love, that brings up this positive energy that can fuel you forward. And versus catabolic energy is a lot of that negative force, and it's associated with a lot of emotions, negative emotions like guilt or fear or just frustration. So how do we bring more of that anabolic energy into our life? And that by finding your Ikigai, that really brings a lot of that anabolic energy into your life, which you will see how in different aspects of your life just get so much more energized, right? Does that make sense?
Important. Yeah. So for somebody, I talk about myself a lot. I'm someone who has a busy mind, and that's why this slowing down element is so important for me because that's what I
Hmm.
personally need to do to kind of keep that in check and prevent overwhelm, prevent burnout. So I've talked to a lot of people about this, that anxiety and worry, those fears, all those things that they can kind of be there all the time, especially for those people that are like these overthinkers, me included. So it sounds like you're saying to kind of combat that, you want to really lean into the things that lift you up or the things that are bringing you joy to try to snap yourself out of some of those more negative thinking patterns, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's really about finding what lights you up. What is that sweet spot? What is your reason for being? Like, and if whatever you're doing, it's kind of like a lot of us do a lot of effort in our lives, right? And the more we effort at things which kind of are not in alignment with who we are, the more there's resistance and there's more stress, right? Versus if we're doing things that are in alignment with who we are, really, then there's less effort. Like time, like just think about it. When I do an exercise where I ask people to look at their week and look at the activities they've done and classify them into red or green activities. The red activities are those things that really required a lot of energy and effort and that you really don't like doing. And the green activities are opposite. Those are the things that time goes by, many hours have gone by and you don't even know what happened. And so when we look at those, obviously you have to do certain things in your life, right? But how can you minimize those red activities? And when you minimize the red activities and you maximize the green activities, that's a lot more positive anabolic energy that you can bring into your life, right? So that's this little exercise where it's like looking at your week and going, well, can I delegate some things that I don't really like to do in order to give me more time to do the things that I love, right? So I don't know how I got
Really
into
being
that, but
intentional. Like, yeah, no, I think it's
yeah,
so important. Like being
yeah.
intentional, paying
Mhm.
attention so that you actually notice
Mhm.
rather than just plowing through like, okay, well, I don't have time to think if this is giving me energy or draining me.
Mhm.
I just have too many things on that list.
And put it in your calendar. Put it in your calendar. Those things that really bring you joy and bring you that positive energy, like schedule them like you'd schedule a meeting.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
That is good advice. I have had so
Yeah.
many people say that, and I try to do it. You forget sometimes, but I
Mhm.
think when it's scheduled, there is a much better chance of them actually happening, right?
Exactly. Exactly. So did I answer your question about Ikigai, or is there anything like do you have any other questions around it, or is it something?
So I mean, I guess you talk about it being crucial for success during career and life transitions. We're really talking about midlife quite a bit right now. So that person in midlife, they're looking to make some changes, really taking some time to consider all of these four aspects of their Ikigai, trying to figure out what it is, trying to lean into that
Hmm.
will it's like, make it easier, right? Make it easier. Lean into what you're good at and what you enjoy doing. And it's not so hard. It's not so
Yeah.
draining.
Yeah.
And
And it also, I mean, again, it doesn't have to be that you give up everything. Like sometimes people will say, I have to continue my work because I need the paycheck. Like I need to do this. But how do I incorporate my ikigai into what I'm doing already? So it's about taking, like, you can start slow. You can, research what you really love to do. You can take classes, you can network, you can all these other things and then you can start maybe a side hustle, right? And once you start that and you find that that's really what takes over your life, that you really want to do that, then when it's the right time, you can leave. Like I left kind of right away, like kind of cold turkey, but you don't have to. So that's the thing is that's the beauty of this, and this can and your ikigai can change over time. It's good to do this exercise every few years to see how it's changed, right? But it's a good basis and guideline, and that's kind of the basis of what I take my clients through. But it's also about visioning your future. Like, who do you really want to be in 20 years? Like, where do you see yourself? I call it the inner mentor. So we do that exercise as well, and then it's about where are the obstacles in your way? What's stopping you from achieving that? And then you talked a little bit earlier is that how did you get the confidence to do this, right? And so how do you build the confidence to do that? So it's kind of a step-by-step process. It's a six-step process called the pyramid of reinvention. The basis is really finding your reason for being. So
it's important to think about these things. Like you said, that's the foundation of it. That's the first step. And
yeah.
give yourself the time, space to consider these aspects of your life. Because when you're too busy and when you're too stressed,
Hmm.
you just can't. So
Hmm.
taking that first step to just make the time and make the intention to make this a
Yeah.
priority if it's something that you are struggling with or that's been in the back of your mind. And I do love you mentioned in the beginning when you were talking about your background and how you got into coaching. You said, I really urge you all, if you hear that voice, don't ignore it.
Hmm.
Because we all do at times, like, oh, I don't have time for that, right? I don't know how to do that, or
Yeah.
whatever it is. You talk
Yeah.
ourselves out of it. But following that voice, your intuition,
Hmm.
really, I think a really important step.
Hmm.
Letting yourself do it, like allowing
Yes.
yourself.
Giving yourself permission to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So, so great. And it will just make your life better in every aspect. So
Yes.
talking about intentionality and all of these
Yes.
things, I always like to ask people to share, if they have one, their morning routine. Do you have any type of morning or evening routines? What
Yes.
does yours look like if you don't mind sharing?
Yeah, I'd love to share. It really depends on also how much time you have. I find that now that these daily habits that I do have become a routine, and that if I don't do that, the day just doesn't go as well as when I do these things. For me, I'm a morning person, so I really like waking up early. And I face my day with the meditation. So even if it's a 10-15 minute meditation, I will do that just to center myself. And so sometimes it's just about breathing and just being it. Meditation can seem a little daunting to a lot of people. And it's really about being present and just breathing and being silent and quiet in your mind. And morning I find is the best time to do that. So I do it sometimes in the evening too, but morning is the best time for me. And then after you meditate, oftentimes thoughts will come that I always journal because there's amazing, we both have podcasts. So like sometimes ideas for podcasts will come out of the meditation. So I write them down and I read them later. I'm like, whoa, where'd that come from? Right. So it's about getting in touch with that. And so journaling is a really important piece. And then I like to do movement, and I have a mobility and exercise routine that I try and do every morning. If I have time, I'd love to go for walks. We talked about that earlier. It's getting a little cooler up here, but it's always nice to do that. And so, whatever routine you have, I would say, is if you kind of put that into your schedule, like we were talking about earlier, it just starts your day out really well. And so those are the morning routines. But I would say also like during the week as well, what do you like to do? Like my husband and I, for example, we've always done like date nights, right? So we still try to incorporate those things that bring you joy, bring you happiness, center you, whatever it is. So spending time with family, spending time with friends, whatever brings you that positive anabolic energy. For me, that would be my routine. And yeah, so I love to exercise too, and I think that brings a lot of that energy into your life.
Right.
And then just sometimes saying if you don't have a lot of time, let's say you're starting an important meeting or it's a stressful situation. Sometimes I just sit down and breathe and say, everything always works out for me. Just some statements like that that just center you and keep you calm.
Yes. Very calming and grounding.
Yes.
Sometimes that's all it takes. You just need to remind yourself,
Yeah.
kind of snap out of the spirals in your head, bring yourself back. And
Yeah.
it really is true. I mean, most of the time, things do work out for the best. And either way, you're going to be okay. And that gentle reminder, I think, is supportive in situations like
Yeah.
that.
Our emotions really are indicators of what's going on in our life, right? And I am actually trained in this. It's called an emotional reframing technique called HAIL. And what it is basically is it's just like if you're feeling like, let's say the emotion of stress, let's say you're feeling stress, right? It's about H is honoring that emotion, right? And then asking yourselves, why is it here? And when you just stop and say, well, why am I feeling stressed right now? Or whatever the emotion might be, asking yourself, why is this here right now? And then the I is influence. How is it influencing me right now? It's causing me to have whatever, like I might be really stressed right now, or my heart's palpitating, whatever it is. And then what can we learn from that, which is the L of the hail. So how can we learn from that emotion? And so when that emotion comes up, then we can alter it or like learn from like, okay, this stress is coming up. How can I learn from it so that it doesn't keep on repeating itself? So it's this kind of a reframing technique of our emotions, it does help as well.
I think that sounds really helpful. I think a lot of us have that same type of feeling that comes up pretty regularly. Like you'll start to find a lot of
Yeah.
commonalities there. Like, oh, it's usually in this type of scenario that I'm feeling a little bit overwhelmed or
Yes.
worried about
Yes.
something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So dealing with the overall root of it.
Mhm. Where is it coming from? Why is it here? And how can I just kind of either let it go or learn from it?
Sure.
Yeah.
And taking that
So,
extra time to do that, sometimes people feel like they don't have that time. But think of all the time you're saving in the future and all the stress and just unnecessary worry and anxiety if you can reframe it or move past it or work through it,
yes.
whatever you need to do to conquer that. I'm speaking to myself here. A lot of times like, oh, I'm too busy. I don't have time to think about that right now, but maybe you're really saving time in the long run. So
Yeah, well, investing time in the now. And well, the other thing is that often, and true, had this conversation, but a lot of times people will say, when I'm just working really hard right now, and then when I get that job, or when I have that relationship, or when I get that body, or then I'm going to be happy, right?
yeah.
And I often say, well, what is it? How is it going to feel when you actually get that job, that body, the relationship? What kind of feeling are you going to have then? And then can you bring that feeling into today? Because then it's kind of like a moving target, right? If you're always saying, I'm going to do this and then I'll be happy,
Yeah.
versus bringing it in today. And how can you bring that feeling of joy, happiness
Because
into
I
what
think
you're
we're
doing
really
now?
after the feeling more than the thing.
Exactly, right? It's the
So
emotions.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Well,
obviously you have the thing too, but keep
yeah. It's such an important reminder. And so often it is like an actual tangible thing. And it's like
well,
nice
why do
to
you want
have.
like
It
why
really
do you want that job? Because you think it's gonna make you happy or successful.
right.
But what does success really mean? Can you bring that into today? Like how can you be successful now, like at what you're doing, rather than waiting? Because you never know what's gonna
I
happen.
know.
Yeah.
Kavita, this is a great conversation. I know people are going to love listening to this and really are going to learn a lot from our time together today.
Thank you.
I love to ask people at the end what your favorite way to slow down right now is. I mean, you gave us a little idea of what your morning routine and everything looks like, but what's one way you're really loving incorporating slowing down into your life?
I just was thinking about this morning. It's just breathe. Like, just don't forget to breathe. It just really slows you down. It sounds kind of simple, but it's just that deep belly breathing. That's how I slow down because there's so much going on in our lives. There's so much that we have responsibilities for, especially as women. again, it's that pause. And whether it's a daily pause in like the minute by minute pause of breathing or the daily pause in whatever the morning routine that I talked about, or the pauses in life when these big transition phases in our life that we take, it's important to take those pauses. And however we can help that along, and if it's daily breathing or these other techniques, it's important because in that pause, you get the clarity. In the breath, you get the clarity.
And we always
So,
have that with us. We can always turn to that.
yes, exactly. 100%.
That's advice. You're so much fun to talk to. Where can
Oh,
we
you too.
find you?
You're so kind. Thanks for asking. Best way to find me is you can go to my website. It's called itsmytimenowcoaching.com. And you can find my coaching program there. I have a podcast called the Midlife Reinvention podcast. You can find all the episodes there or on your favorite podcast platform as well. I also have an online course, which you can find details of there, which is called It's My Time Now as well. So I do one-on-one coaching, I do group coaching, and I have my course as well. And as you said before, I'm working on writing my first book, which is going to be about this whole process of taking time. It's my time now. And what does that mean for you? And also going through the process of the pyramid of reinvention, which is really about rediscovering who you are. So the best way is it's mytimenowcoaching.com. That's my website. And you can reach out to me. I'd love to offer a coaching consultation for your listeners, 45-minute call. We call it Breakthrough Conversations. Happy to offer those to your listeners. So my email is Kavita at itsmytimenowcoaching.com.
Perfect. I will make sure we link all of that so everyone can find you. Thank you for being here today and sharing everything with us, teaching us about our Ikigai and how we can incorporate that in our life. So thank you for coming on the show today.
Well, it was my pleasure. And thank you for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation.
I hope you've enjoyed our journey together. Please take a moment to rate and review the show. It really helps us grow and reach others looking to slow down too. Wishing you simplicity and ease in your world, and I'll see you back here next week.